Hello and welcome to Beyond Tomorrow at the Maintenance Fair 2026 in Gothenburg. My name is Josef Forsman. I work as a consultant here for Plantvision in digitalization in general. I worked a lot with the maintenance systems among other things in the process industry. And in this episode we will focus on how to manage spare parts efficiently. And to clarify the subject, I have with me in the studio Charles Mackenzie, who works at SPARETECH. Warm welcome to you, Charles. Perhaps you can start by telling us a little about who you are, your background and previous experience.
Brilliant. Thank you, Joseph. It's great to be here. So I'm a South African and I moved to Germany 6 years ago. I spent the last 6 years working with German-based startups, particularly in the industrial tech space, and helping them to expand globally. So in my previous role, I was working with digital twins and being able to capture environments with laser technology. And now I'm with SPARETECH, and what we're doing is helping companies to improve the spare part data that they have available to themselves and really unlock a lot of efficiencies within their free cash flow and then also for the employees.
Okay, so for me, spare parts in a maintenance system, it's like, okay, you have a spare part, it has an article number, maybe a supplier and a manufacturer. What's the problem with spare parts?
I think that's the amazing thing. It sounds so simple. But when you run it at scale, it becomes incredibly complicated. So we have some customers who have, say, 1 million parts in their material master, and they're operating in 70 countries with 300 plus plants. So then trying to manage these spare parts becomes actually quite complicated. And the systems that you have between them is also very siloed, and you end up with a lot of fragmented data. And one of the things that we see with all of this is that the industry itself is quite opaque. So you'll have an original manufacturer who will give a part an article number, but then you'll have a distributor who gives it its own material number. And then it gets used in a machine created by a line builder, and they give it its own material number. And in some extreme cases, we have customers who even give the parts that they buy their own material numbers. And so what ends up happening is you have a whole range of article numbers just identifying a single part. So when you have a number, you can identify the part, but then you don't know actually who was the original manufacturer. And if you want to buy it, where do you buy it from? And then the result of this is there's a huge number of duplicates that get created in the system as well. So you can have the same part multiple times in your ERP system. You can have that same part multiple times within your factory. And the result of that is you end up having a lot of spare parts that you don't actually need. And in some instances, you're trying to find a part, but you can't find a part, but you actually have the part, it's just under a different number. And that's within a factory itself. And if you scale that problem up to kind of a global level that I was mentioning earlier, then you have significant wastage and a significant amount of industry sitting on your balance sheet that doesn't actually need to be there.
Mm. And I guess this is a general problem for many industries, not only specific ones, but in general. When you need a spare part, I mean, and every factory needs a spare part, I guess. But the background of the company, can you tell us a little about that?
Yes, sure. So SPARETECH was founded by Martin Weber and Dr. Lucas Biedermann, and they were originally Porsche consultants working with manufacturers, particularly in the maintenance and logistics space, and they got to see this problem firsthand. And that's where the challenge really stood out to them, that they were like, someone actually needs to do something about this data problem is a real challenge. And so off the back of that, they started the company 5 years ago, and they received funding, and now we've grown to, I think we have 60 or 70 large manufacturers who are our customers. We've got a team in across Germany. We've also have offices in the US now, and so we've scaled quite quickly. And maybe just as one thing, last year we were nominated by Bosch as one of their top 7 global innovative partners. So we've come on really leaps and bounds in the last few years.
So the main industry, or the root industry, is the car industry, more or less, that the company is based on. But you're working with other industries as well now, or?
Yes, I mean, being a German company, obviously there's a lot of automotive companies and tier 1 suppliers that we've worked with, but we've also worked a lot with food and beverage companies, chemical companies, we have paper production companies, there are pharmaceutical companies. So generally any highly automated place or operation where you see a lot of parts that are needed, and also where unplanned downtime is a real business risk.
Just what is, I mean, you have been in contact with many manufacturers now, I guess, or many production plants. And what is the general status of the spare parts management? How good are plants at managing spare parts?
So I think as a starting point, there's obviously a spectrum. You have some companies that are highly, highly efficient and run a very clean kind of spare parts operation. And then you have other companies that are still working with paper or running the entire material master through a kind of shared Excel spreadsheet. And then you kind of have a range in between the two. But generally, we see that spare parts operations is something that is a little bit late to the party when it comes to digitization. It's almost a kind of an unlooked area and hasn't received a huge amount of attention.
You've had a seminar right now on the stage here. So there you talked a bit about the cross-site visibility. That sounded interesting. If you could describe that a bit to me.
Yes, sure. So I think the idea is that if you have a single plant, things are quite simple. You have one storeroom, you have 1 or 2 people who are managing the storeroom, you've got the technicians on the floor, you have a close relationship with the procurement team. You don't have too many challenges with scaling. But when you have multiple plants, then the challenges become a lot more difficult. And if you're trying to, say, be a procurement person who is responsible for framework agreements and trying to negotiate your best prices across the entire network, then you want to know what parts you have and where to buy them from. And if each plant is running their operation individually, then you don't have that, because plant A will give a part number, will buy from a certain supplier who has one article number, and plant B buys the same part from another supplier which has a different article number. And so when you roll this up, it looks like you've got 2 different suppliers buying 2 different parts, when in fact you're buying the same part from, at the end, the same original manufacturer. So that's on the procurement end. And then if you're a technician on the floor and you're trying to get a part because you need it to run some urgent maintenance, and you don't have that part in your factory, then one thing you could do is see, well, is there a neighboring plant that maybe does have that part that I could get that from? But that means that you have to have some way of easily accessing that plant and to see what inventories they have.
Yeah, and maybe they don't have the same information about that spare part as well, I guess.
Yes, and I think this is where some of the real frustration comes in. I think being a maintenance manager or a storeroom keeper is an incredibly difficult job, because there is so little clear understanding of what parts are and how to find them. And I mean, I've seen examples of email chains where you have 15, 20 people asking questions and taking pictures and saying, do you have this? And they just send a picture, and someone coming back and saying, oh, I've got this. Is it this part? No. And then it's like, oh, but I got this number. Is it this? And then this goes round and round and round and round and round, and people are just trying to find something. And so it's incredibly difficult. And for me, I think of it a bit like the sound engineers at a concert. Obviously, being in this podcast studio, we can think about the sound guys. No one goes to a concert to see the sound engineers. They go there to see the band. But the moment something goes wrong with the sound, every person, from the people on stage to the entire audience, turns around, they look at the sound engineers, and they go, what is wrong with you? You had one job. And I think for the maintenance professionals, they have this pressure. So they are trying to combat these expectations that if something goes down and production stops in an unplanned space, that there is real pressure with real consequences for the company. So you can see they don't have a lot of information on the one end. There's a huge amount of pressure and expectation on them. And probably the third pillar in all of this is the expectation is they need to lower costs in the current environment.
If we look at it from a bit different perspective, from the storage technician, so to speak, if you've ever been in a storage, I guess you all know that you have some vital parts that you have crystal clear understanding where they are and what they are meant for, but then you have some corner in the back where you have stuff laying around. So what's your perception of the status of material storages around different plants?
I would say there's also another group of parts in the storerooms, and that is all the parts that have been bought and then not used. And I think in some storerooms, you'll see a whole lot of parts in their original packaging sitting maybe even on a pallet that have not been touched in years.
Yeah, and for the storage technicians, I mean, they look brand new, and there must be some value in this.
Yes, and I think it also depends on what the company's strategy is. So for some companies, you know, they spent the money. There's no real incentive for them to say maybe remove those parts. But if you're a maintenance manager, you wouldn't want to give it up because that's your insurance if something goes wrong.
Yes. AI. We must talk about AI. I guess there's some opportunity for AI to be used in this scenario. Where is your take on AI for managing spare parts?
So our view as a company is that obviously AI is a very powerful tool, but it also has its place. So one of the key things that we provide is accurate and reliable information. So for us, when it comes to matching the parts that sit in our catalog with our customer's material master, there we want to be 100% confident that when we make a recommendation that a part is a part, that is actually that part. And so for that particular use case, even though we use very advanced algorithms and to be able to kind of perform that matching, that's not necessarily a use case for us where you'd want, say, the creativity of a generative AI. So in that particular core system that we have with matching, we don't believe that that's something for now where generative AI can add value. But we do see a lot of value in other areas. So for instance, one recent feature that we've successfully rolled out now last year is a tool that we call Standardize. So there you take a company's, say, if they've got a certain taxonomy that they want to use for, say, a short description or even a long description of a material, we're able to take that taxonomy that they have, obviously bearing in mind the field restrictions that you have when it comes to, say, SAP field limits and things like that. And then based on the input that the customer provides us or the end user provides us, as well as the information we have within our catalog, we can then build a standardized short description. And from that, we can also then translate that into multiple languages, and we can serve that pretty much in real time to the user when they're creating a new material or updating an existing material. And then whoever's doing this would be most likely an expert because they're the person who's creating the material. So we can serve it to them to just verify it. And that's something that we found exceptionally helpful for our customers. And so I think that's one place where we see AI. But there are lots of possible use cases.
We haven't used AI even a decade yet, so well, let's see where that ends. Okay, so if you think that you're a maintenance manager or plant manager or whatever, and you think that you have some kind of problems with your spare part management, what do you do?
So I mean, this would be something I just covered in the presentation that you mentioned, but I think the first thing is you need to think about how can you stop adding more bad data into your system. So basically, you start with bringing in some governance and some clear material creation processes that use the original manufacturer data as the beginning point to then bring kind of clean data into the system from the very beginning. I think that's the first thing that you need to look at doing and saying, okay, how can we just stop having more bad data coming in? And then the second part of that is saying, okay, now with the existing data that we do have, how do we then start looking at addressing the duplicates that we have? Because if you've got a 10,000 euro camera system that's got a duplicate part number, you can realize a very significant cost savings very quickly, just as one example. And then the thing is, okay, can we bring in additional information for those materials? So can we enrich this? Because then we have a better understanding of the parts that we do have. And then part of this would be, okay, what parts are obsolete, what parts have success information, and then you can start to work through this. And then the last part in the process would then be to say, okay, how do we make this available to all the plants in our network? And I think that's kind of the general approach that you could take to improving what you're doing on the spare parts maintenance side of things. But I think a lot of this takes a lot of training. It's not just something that happens. You obviously need to think about the people who are doing these things and working alongside with them to help them make some of these changes.
All right. So a lot of information about spare parts and spare part management, and I think we'll round it off there for today. So my main takeaway from today that there's you maybe think it's some information about spare parts, but it's a own universe more or less, and much frustration and money can be saved. Okay. Many thanks to Charles.
Oh, thank you
for joining us today and sharing your insights and experiences. And thank you as well, all of you listening. I hope this episode has given you some inspiration and fresh insights for your ongoing digitalization journeys in production and maintenance.
Den här sändningen är producerad av Plantvision AB för Underhållsmässan. Du kan läsa mer om oss och komma i kontakt med våra experter genom att besöka oss på webben www.plantvision.se. Där hittar du även vår huvudpoddkanal Beyond Tomorrow med flera intressanta samtal. Stort tack för att du lyssnade.